It's 4 o'clock in Atlanta, Georgia. It's 3 p.m. in Lebanon, Missouri. The last 2 years have been extraordinary. I have not seen as much damage, destruction, and depravity infecting our blessed land as I have seen since leftists took complete control of our government. I'll be taking stock to where all of this has led, and I, your liberty-loving Latino, along with a good friend, will remember a legend. Without fear or favor, the Chris Salcedo Show starts right now. Good afternoon and happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to the Chris Salcedo Show here on Newsmax. These are the stories making headlines across America. Biden's balloon blunder. Any way you slice it, America is in trouble. Plus, the Chris Salcedo Show remembers Rush Limbaugh and his love for America and his warning about Joe Biden. And Joe Biden's party doesn't want the GOP looking into the 6.5 million illegal aliens they have let into our country. To help cut through all that noise, we'll be joined by the woman who defeated Liz Cheney, Wyoming Congresswoman Harriet Hageman, and the great Trish Regan is also standing by with fresh analysis on Joe Biden's lackluster Democrat economy. But first, let's talk about this unprecedented highway to hell our nation has been on after we were foolish enough to turn over the levers of power to a political ideology and Democrat Party that wants to use government not to serve you, but to enslave you to their dark and sinister vision of the world. That vision has you and your family with little or no rights, or the ability to resist them. No joy and no hope. Look where Democrats have brought us. We take stock of our current predicament in today's preamble, but, as always, we have a legacy of hope to share, a legacy that is the embodiment of America. Newly elected Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman has checked himself into a hospital, allegedly to get treatment for clinical depression. Far from being the first indication that Mr. Fetterman would struggle in his new role, this episode is only the latest, obvious, and in-your-face example of how Mr. Fetterman is not and has not been able to handle the rigors and demands of his job. Even though they tried, left-wing rags couldn't hide the fact that Mr. Fetterman's stroke had left him unfit for the office. What does it say about the voters of Pennsylvania when all it takes to get elected is to have a D in front of your name? Can the rest of the nation conclude that Pennsylvania voters care little, if at all, if elected officials can actually do the job? As one sitting senator put it, what's wrong with Pennsylvania voters? It's a valid question. What kind of voter intentionally votes for a candidate who clearly isn't up to the task of protecting and defending the people he or she was elected to protect and defend? Perhaps Pennsylvania voters have been reading too much of the New York Times. In the wake of crisis after crisis under Democrat rule, the New York Times is openly fretting about preserving government stranglehold over you, our people. They couldn't give a rat's rear end about you and your family's liberty, security, or prosperity, but they do spring into action when we conservatives point out that government, in the hands of left-wingers, fails to accomplish its stated mission, instead opting to push whacked-out political agendas championed by anti-American zealots that populate the worldwide left. We shouldn't be too shocked. This is the same paper that is pushing the divisive, anti-American, and historically inaccurate 1619 Project. It's also the paper that did its best to run interference for the Nazis in World War II, a fact that has been chronicled in copious articles and books. While I'm on the topic of fake news, one of the past purveyors of fake news, CNN, is in the middle of another controversy of its own making. Left-wing anchor Don Lyme is in hot water today with CNN's Women after a snarky and sexist comment he launched at GOP presidential candidate Nikki Haley.
Nikki Haley isn't in her prime. Sorry. When a woman is considered to be in her prime in her 20s and 30s and maybe 40s.
What are you talking? Wait.
That's not according to me.
Prime for what? Are you talking about prime for like childbearing, or are you talking about prime for being president?
What the facts are. Google it. Everybody at home. When is a woman in her prime? It says 20s, 30s, and 40s.
Yeah, you better shake that stuff off your foot, Mr. Lyme. Don Lyme, according to the East Bay Times, reportedly said that some of his best friends are women after he suggested that a 51-year-old woman was past her prime. Now, this comes from a man who has been effusive in his praise for Joe Biden, an alleged man who is 80 years old. And that leads us to Joe Biden, who claimed that the U.S. has been using $400,000 missiles to knock out unidentified balloons out of the sky.
The intelligence community's current assessment is that these three objects were most likely balloons tied to private companies, recreation or research institutions studying weather or conducting other scientific research.
Joe Biden went on to say that the intelligence community said that the balloons had zero connection to our enemy, Communist China. Now, keep in mind, this is the same intelligence community that lied to Americans saying that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation. Also keep in mind that this is the same Joe Biden who said he never discussed overseas business dealings with his cokehead son. The simple fact is, when Democrats are in charge, our government starts lying about some pretty serious stuff. Sources tell the Chris Salcedo Show that some of these balloons do have ties to Communist China and that Biden is lying to protect his pals in Beijing. Regardless of which version is true, nothing about this is good for Americans. If Biden is telling the truth for once in his miserable life, then he has admitted that the U.S. military under Democrat control is shooting things out of the sky without identifying them first. After that same military under Democrat control saw a China spy balloon rising from China, tracked it into American airspace, allowed it to violate our airspace, and then allowed it to spy on America for a week, and then shot it down over water to make recovery difficult. If Biden is true to form and lying again, he's covering up multiple incursions against our sovereign airspace by a racist, genocidal, communist slave state. Either way, it's bad. One man predicted the utter calamity that the Biden administration would be for this country. And though I'm deeply saddened to be without his august presence in American media, a part of me is thankful he's not here to see the cataclysm that the Democrats have unleashed on our blessed land. Today is February 17th. 2 years ago today, the great Rush Limbaugh passed away. He had a valiant and very public battle with lung cancer. Though we didn't know it at the time, the last call to the Rush Limbaugh Show was one of heartfelt gratitude and was a response to Rush saying he felt as though he had failed in his mission to inform America about the perils of electing Democrats and also the virtues of pro-American conservatism.
Okay, who's next? Gary, Cape May, New Jersey. Great to have you, sir. Hello.
Thank you very much. Mega prayers, Rush. Two things I want to tell you, Rush. Number one, quit apologizing. You have nothing to apologize for. If people can't keep up with what you're saying, so be it. But we understand what you're saying.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
And number two, over the last few weeks, I've heard you say that you feel you failed in getting your message out there about liberalism. I want you to know that you have absolutely not failed. You have not failed, sir. We understand, okay? And we wish you all the best. Be well.
Well, thank you. You know, I really appreciate that. The odds are that there are a lot of people, coal miners, a lot of people that voted for Biden who had no idea what he's going to do and what's yet to come. That's why I say they're going to overstep, and it isn't going to take them long, and it isn't going to be pretty when all kinds of people start to figure it out.
As always, Rush was right. The left wing did overstep. And America is awakening to the fact that a vote for a Democrat is a vote against your own interests and your family's future and freedom. Rush Limbaugh was a visionary, pioneer, an entrepreneur, and an unapologetic lover of the United States of America. History will record his contributions to mankind in ways that leftists like Joe Biden and leftist enablers like Mitch McConnell will never know. Rush had a saying, "I'll tell you when it's time to panic," he said in response to callers fretting over an advance the left wing had made in tearing down our country. He would go on to say that it's never time to panic in America, for we live in the greatest nation God ever gave man. And as long as one American has that spirit of freedom, liberty, and prosperity under God, America has a chance. Now, let's expand this conversation. The great Rush Limbaugh always used humor to counter the left, humor like this parody song from the 90s.
You were the sunshine of our life, Rush. That's why we'll miss you oh so much.
You know, I'm the mayor of Realville here.
You cut down.
Okay, that wasn't from the 90s, but It's a great parody song.